So what we're going to talk about today are the books that we've been working on, and each of us have worked on a book multiple times. So that's kind of the focus of this little fireside chat. Fritz is going to talk about thematic cartography and geovisualization. Cindy's going to talk about her book, Designing Better Maps. And I'm going to talk about map use, which I've been working on. So I'm going to start with Fritz, but let me do a little introduction. He's a teaching professor at the Penn State University, the Pennsylvania State University, where he teaches classes focusing on cartography, spatial stats, and GIS applications in health.
All right. First, I'd like to express how honored I am that you invited me to come up here and give my spiel about the book. So I'm going to give you a little history. So we're each going to talk a little bit differently about our book. I'm going to talk about the history of my involvement with the textbook, because that kind of shaped my contribution to what my elements of the textbook were. So Terry Slocum, he's an emeriti professor from University of Kansas. He was there for, I don't know, he was department head for 9 years. He's retired. He lives in Fairbanks, Alaska now with his wife. And he started the book at the same time that I started my PhD schooling, which was 1995. I finished in 99, and the first edition of the book was where I first became involved with the book, although not in an official capacity as a co-author. I did a lot of the illustrations for the book in Adobe Illustrator. I forget what version, a long time ago. But he didn't have that expertise, so he asked me to help him out with some of the graphics, which I did. And the other element of the involvement, I think, is that the first edition didn't have any coordinate system, map projections, that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm really, I guess, known for in some regards. So when the second edition came out, recognizing the void in that book, he asked me to write 3 chapters on coordinate systems, earth shape and size, map projections, and then selecting projections. So that was kind of, I guess, part of how I became involved with the book. The other element was that the authors, so Terry, long tenure at Kansas, Bob McMaster, Hugh Howard, and myself were all part of his advisees for his PhD. So there's a lineage there of Kansas cartography. And if you go back to George Jenks, there's a very large lineage there that transcended not only to Terry, but also to Bob McMaster, who was there with Jenks as well. And then Hugh and myself, Jenks was still alive when I was there, but he was in a nursing home. He was not, his faculties were not all there. But that element of Jenks was part and parcel onto both Hugh and I by virtue of Terry. So the involvement then was in part because I was there in Kansas, part because I had expertise in projections and so forth, and then part because of the lineage with Terry being my advisor for my PhD. Yeah. So and then I've just sort of kept with the book, updating the projection chapters as well. There's a new version coming out, new edition. It'll come out, the book is due in February, so I expect summer, maybe this time next year, the new edition will be coming out. So it'll have a whole new chapters on GeoAI, maps and society. Of course, we're going to revise all the chapters, updating with more contemporary research and so forth. So, here, yep.
Okay. That sounds so similar to my story, but I'm not giving my story yet. I'm going to ask Cindy to come up, and I will explain that she is a professor of geography and information science technology at the Pennsylvania State University. So she's worked as a map and atlas design consultant for the U.S. Census Bureau, U.S. Geological Survey, National Cancer Institute, National Center for Health Statistics, and National Park Service. And she was awarded the International Cartographic Association's Carl Mannerfelt Gold Medal in 2023, their highest honor. She's currently Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs in the College of IST.
Thanks, Aileen. And Aileen and I we're grad students together 40 years ago, so we talk about lineages. Well, my book is out. It came out during the last NACIS meeting, which was sort of surreal, because I was like, oh, if only a few days earlier I could have had it at the meeting. But so I have it at this meeting. Sure. The lineage for that book started, it is intrinsically also related to Esri, and I had done a little short course, and by the time I printed out all the parts of the short course, I was like, it was that fat. I was like, okay, this is kind of a book already. And then it's sort of simultaneously I had been on sabbatical at the Census Bureau and working with a lot of GIS experts at Census who didn't know really much about making maps and wanted to learn about making maps. And so the designing better maps was literally for federal workers who had GIS tools. They wanted to make maps. They wanted some guidance on how to do it well. And you see that also in color brewers. Like, they wanted color schemes. They didn't want to learn the theory. They just wanted to know what colors to use. And then over the years, it got a little more adopted by classes, by professors. I was like, it needs a few more parts. Fritz, similarly, I put in more projections on this third edition. Mine's a lot wider pacing. It's sort of over 20 years. I did that first one off of the census inspiration in 2005, and then really tuned it up in 2015. I had done the graphics in a way that were kind of literally screen captures out of ARC, so you could see what results you were going to get, and then I made them into more generalized professional graphics. And it's interesting to do a book with Esri Press. You get a lot of support. They do all the layout. It's full color all the way through. There's a lot of interaction with quite knowledgeable editors and graphics people there. So that was really a luxury to have the work unfold that way. I'll stop there, and you can ask me questions about the production experience. And a key part of doing the second and the third editions were things that bugged me that I wanted to do better, but also had fantastic undergraduate students available who I had in my class, and I was like, okay, you kid, you are great, and you can help me and make all these maps, because I don't have time to make all these maps, because now I'm a full professor and department head and associate dean. And so Bill Limpasathian, many of you know, was my manager as an undergrad. He managed me when he was an undergrad on the second edition, and then Nate Sherrick, who's not here, was an undergrad who managed me on the third edition.
Okay, so then there's me. I am a research cartographer at Esri. I've been there since 2003. Before that, I was a professor at University of Oregon. And before that, I was a PhD student at Oregon State University. And before that, I was a master's student at Michigan State, and Cindy was my office mate. She was getting a PhD, and I was getting a master's degree. But I think it's really interesting, Fritz's trajectory and my trajectory, because my major advisor is John Kimmerling. His major advisor was Phil Murky, who was the original author of the textbook. What you don't see is the 5 previous editions before this. So back to 1984, when the first edition came out, and then on the third edition, Phil Murky asked his PhD student, John Kimmerling, to become one of the authors. And over time, John escalated to the lead author position. And the way that I got involved is when I started working for Esri, John called me up and said, Aileen, Phil's got a garage full of map use books. Can Esri Press sell them? And so I asked Esri Press, and they said, no, but we'll buy the rights to the book and ask the authors to update the book. And Kimberly said, well, I'm not going to do this unless you help, Aileen. And I was like, okay, why not? I didn't think it was going to be that much work. So that's how I got involved. So like Fritz was saying, there's sort of a lineage, and while their textbook comes out of the Jenks School of Thought, Phil was at Wisconsin at the time, so there was sort of the Robinson School of Thought. And Kimmerling had also worked on and so had Phil worked on elements of cartography. So there's sort of two schools of thoughts that are embedded in these two different textbooks. And then Cindy's school of thought in her own book. So that, and
But, so we're talking about the big schools, so Michigan, I was at Michigan State, Judy
Right.
Olson was Arthur Robinson's student, so it all interweaves.
So now we're just going to sit down and we're just going to chat. If you want to ask us questions or you want to tell us your stories, I know there are book people in here, people who have written books or worked on books. So, we want to hear your experiences too. But I think we could just sit and chat, and I think we're going to do that. So.
Is there any questions? Yeah.
So when it comes to the professional application of cartography and literary work, does that also apply to atlases or other cartographic-centered works? And if so, is the process different?
I've never published an atlas, so I can't speak on that, yeah.
I've already published an atlas, so I can't speak on the textbook side. Sorry.
You want to speak on the atlas?
No.
Well, I think,
She's worked on
I've
atlases.
just done some atlas work for Census Bureau and National Center for Health Statistics. I would say an atlas, it usually is much more template-driven, like you'd have a template for a page and a topic for a page spread.
And the whole spread, everything spread.
And a place you have to map. Like, for me, doing my maps, you could pick a map of anything to illustrate a use of color. So we're trying to get a variety of places and environments and topics. But other than that, I'm really going around looking for open data, so I don't have to ask for permission when I'm making the map. Those are really different than making an atlas, where an atlas, you really have to, you want to drill down and express what's key about the place.
Yeah, I just forgot, I did work on an atlas. So I was on the Atlas of Oregon. I would say there's research in both. What you're talking about, though, I would say you would identify the audience as a general audience, but really for us, for who we're talking to a technical general audience. So there's that difference. And then for an atlas, too, I think you're thinking about themes that relate to a topic, Stargazer's Atlas or Atlas of Oregon. And in what we're looking at, it's a little broader, especially when you're going, how many chapters do you have?
26.
And
11.
yeah. And our last book ended up 660 pages long, so we split it into 2 volumes, but it's still 12 chapters long in this one, and it's a broader spectrum, I think, is maybe the way to think of it. Anything else? Yeah, maybe.
So if you're not publishing with Esri Press, how do you find a publisher? Maybe some of those challenges, like the book that I wrote a number of years ago, I was approached by the publisher, and that was a frustrating relationship because they had some preconceived design choices about layout and all of those things that I had no say in at all. Like the captions are like 4-point font or something ridiculously tiny. How do you navigate some of that? Or maybe even with Esri Press, how do you navigate some of those design choices?
So the third edition we felt was the last edition. So we had started with Prentice Hall, or it was Pearson that it became, but Prentice Hall was the first publisher. for edition 1 and 2. And for the third edition, we wanted to, it was published in 2009, and we wanted to have a new edition. And they stonewalled us, basically. The whole organization of print book had changed fundamentally, and they saw our book as too niche for their more broader intro level courses. I mean, I think we sold maybe 3,000 copies, but that wasn't meeting their criteria for a new edition. But they kept saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get you new edition here soon." Well, that turned into years, literally, and we got to the point where either a new edition is going to come out, or it's going to take so much work to do the book that it really isn't worth. We'd have to completely rewrite it. So Terry was the one who championed getting a lawsuit against Pearson to get our rights back, because Pearson wasn't going to give us the rights to the book. So we had to go through the courts to get Pearson to do this, and he got on with the Authors Guild, which is an organization that helps people like us go through the litigation process of arguing and getting your rights back for the book. So this was a huge endeavor for him to undertake, and I don't know how much it cost. It wasn't cheap. So after a fair amount of time, Pearson acquiesced and gave us our rights back. So then we had to find a publisher. We didn't have one. And this was still before the pandemic, mind you. So we went through, I forget how many proposals to send out. And for whatever, and sending out proposals like a crapshoot. You have no idea what they're looking for. You don't know if what you're saying is going to sell the book. So finally, Oxford University Press came back and said, "Hey, we're interested," which we thought was pretty good, right? I mean, it's Oxford. So we met with the editor, and we had started to develop a proposal. And then COVID hit, and that was it. They said, we can't take on any new projects right now. Check back in whenever COVID ends, right? Well, that wasn't very practical. So just before COVID hit, 2019, Sarah Battersby and I published a book through CRC Press. And Irma Brighton, who is my editor for that project, or for our project, every year she'd write me and say, "Fritz, you got a new idea, you got a new book idea, we want a book idea. Can you do something in R?" She just wanted stuff, right? It's like, so I told Terry, I said, "I'm pretty sure that if we went through CRC Press that we could get a book deal." And he was like, well, he wasn't really sold on that publisher, but that's another story. So anyways, we submitted a proposal, and yeah, sure enough, it got pinged, and now we're with CRC Press. Yeah.
By the way, Esri Press does publish people's works. So if you're interested in potentially publishing through Esri Press, you can write a proposal or talk to them. They'll be at AAG, for example. But like Cindy was saying, Esri Press does have a professional staff that helps you. And so in a lot of ways, it is very nice. And in a lot of ways, it's very frustrating. Because, like you said, Amy, sometimes, I will say though, on design and layout, they pretty much listen to you, and you can ask them to make changes. They gave us a book cover that I didn't like, so I said, no, that's no good. You have to do these, at least try making these kinds of changes. So they were very amenable to that. But then there were things that were in the structure of publishing through Esri Press that, first of all, weren't articulated to us at the outset. And I think that caused the biggest problem. And there was no flexibility on them. So our book is going to come out in ebook format. We had to have alt text for all the images. And as Cindy knows, because she had to do it too, an image is not just, you know, the whole image. It's every portion of the image, which is why we ended up with 654 alt tags, which was information I received about 3 weeks before this past Monday.
Oh,
Yes.
Boy, I knew it from the beginning.
No.
I'm a better manager than you.
Yes, I didn't know. So that was about 3 weeks ago. We turned the book in on Monday. So it's been a scramble, but there was no flexibility because it's going to be an ebook. It's got to have it. And so this whole thing that Anthony was talking about in the last session about how to write alt tags, I didn't have any time to do research. I have PowerPoint slides that gave me my formulas for if it's a map or if it's a satellite image or if it's those are the worst, the diagrams. The diagrams that you make for all those projections, they're the worst to try and write an alt tag for. So,
That's curious, because my advice for the alt, so to back up a little bit, when you're doing a publication, a book, what we're given is a template that it's a Word template. It's just like how you work in Word, and it has styles, and you need to tag every title, subtitle, text block, caption with a specific tag that they put in there, not that word tags, but it's a special Word template. And so alt tags is one of the styles in there. So Aileen, I was told to do a short, very short alt tag that wasn't redundant with the caption. There's already a caption there. And the text. So seems quite different than what if you were in the last session where Anthony was talking about a standalone map, basically. These are additional little descriptors that complement the caption and text flow. So it's pretty different, but I knew that I had to do that from the beginning. I mean, it was 500 alt tags, but nevertheless, I had time to do it as I was writing the captions and so forth. Here's Bill. Bill was my manager on the second edition.
anybody else in here publish? I know Debbie has published from National Geographic. Anybody else a publisher in here? I mean, not a publisher, but a person who's published a book, or Amy? Yeah. And you had a question? Anybody else? I think you had a question.
Yeah, so the short version is, how do you know it's time for a new edition? So you've all had books with multiple editions. Technology is changing constantly. Is there a process for that, or is it just like you've got the right grad student to help you and it's the right time? I'm wondering if you could speak more to that.
So for our book, I mean, we'd published the third edition. It was a copyright imprint date of 2009. It'd been at least 10 years, so yeah, it was ready for a new edition. I think, you know, the time in that regards. But once the once the fourth edition came out through CRC Press last year, we got an email from the editor who said, "You need to do a new edition. You have a year to do it. That's it." So I think different publishers have different cycles that they do their updates to. The other book that I have with Sarah Battersby, the editor contacted me it was over the summer, and said you need to do a new edition to that. Either sales or, as Cindy said, you know, the book with Terry is a textbook, so that gets resold back to used bookstores or to the bookstore, and those go into the used book market, which the publisher makes no money off of. So they need a new revenue generation. So part of it, I think, is driven by economies of scale in that regard. But yeah, I'll let.
Yeah, my spacing is 10 years apart, and as I alluded to in the little introductory comment, I had a great undergrad that I knew could do great maps and manage me, and so that was a little bit of the impetus. And also, I was teaching from the book content. That was the main part of my slides, and I was like, I should update these. I had stepped down from being department head, so I had a chunk of, like, wow, I have all this time. So that was part of it. What do I want to do with this new freedom to do research and writing and things? It was completely the reverse in the sense that I had Nate Cherrick, and we had started working on the graphics, and I was like kind of to the acquisitions editor, hey, would you be interested in a new edition of this book as I'm working on it, you know? And just, okay, write a proposal. I'm like, okay. So I write like, she says yes and then says write a proposal, and then so I write 2 pages. And so it's like completely the flip side because I've been with that same company for a long time and done research for them and consulting for them and have books with them. And so I'm a little spoiled, I guess, on that side of it. But mostly it was me teaching from that content and realizing more professors were teaching from the content, which wasn't my original audience that I pitched to, so I felt like it would benefit from some a little more sensible treatment of the bivariate options, a little bit better conclusion on the book of key examples that highlight an integration of the concepts, and a little more projections.
Well, Esri Press loves Cindy, so they'll print anything that she offers them. There had been a pretty good cycle of updates, but there was 10 years between the last one and this one. So the last one was 2016, this one will be 2026. And that's on me because I knew that Kimmerling didn't want to be the lead author, so I knew I was going to be the lead author, but I didn't have a third person to help me. So, and it wouldn't, if it's me and Kimmerling and he's retired and he doesn't want to be the third author, the lead author, I was going to have to do a lot. So it took me a while. We went to the ICA Mountain Cartography Conference, and Pat Kennelly was in the car with me as we were driving out to Snow Mountain Ranch outside of Denver. And I said, would you do this book? And he thought about it for maybe 10 minutes, and then he said, yeah, I think I'll do that book with you guys. Well, Pat Kennelly was also a Kimmerling PhD student at the same time I was a PhD. She was a little bit, she got her PhD a little bit before us, but we were contemporary PhD students, and then Patrick was too. So he came on this edition, and I finally had somebody to help me, and I finally had some time. That's basically what it came down to. Time, yeah. But I think maybe part of your question was also, how do you know what to put in a new edition? Not just when to do it, I think is also, but I want to find out from my colleagues, how do you know what to put in the new edition? And if you already have a book that's 600 pages long, what are you going to take out? I mean, what we did was we split it into 2 volumes. So that's our solution there. The first volume's done. It got turned in on Monday. Now we have to start the second volume. But, what do you leave in and what do you take out, right?
Yeah, it's interesting publishing with Esri Press because they actually, for my books, which are to present concepts, they don't want me to put how to do this in ArcGIS. So I've progressively taken more and more out that's specific to GIS tools. It's an interesting backwards relationship. Yeah, and then just things that I felt were missing. But Fritz?
Yeah, so, there's no mistaking our book is encyclopedic. I mean, that's just the way Terry wanted it, and I think it's very successful at what it does. One of the things that we do is we look at the research, both current and historical. We want to make sure that we cover and include and keep historically important research that was foundational to cartography. I mean, that's sort of the overarching goal for the book. But the publisher at the same time places limits on how big the book can be. And to that extent, then, we have to go through and judiciously say, well, okay, this piece was important, but there's other pieces that are more important, so we have to swap this out for that. The argument is that piece that we took out still persists in an older edition, so it's not getting lost to the cartographic history. It's just getting supplemented by something else that's more timely, more, you fill in the blank with that. So That's part and parcel of how we make the decision. There's also a web page for the book where we end up moving some of the ancillary information to, and we direct folks if they're interested to go and look at that. Just another historical record.
I found I was taking out also content where I got too detailed, frankly. You know, over the years, as I tried to explain it to my students, I was like, okay, Cindy, you're way down in the weeds of something. Like the difference between something you overlay graphically versus geographically tagged versus part of the data, you know, okay. So I found out I was taking out some of that excessive detail.
Yeah. Well, we're really, really lucky because we have Esri right there that we can ask for advice. And so we have a parcel fabric team, and we have our people who are in geodesists, and we have, you know, myriad people that we can go to and ask for their ideas. And so we had them review some of the chapters, and they would say, well, this is not relevant anymore. You're missing this whole, you know, the SPCS 2022, which is going to come out next year, is really important. People have to understand about it. It's not in any textbooks right now. You better get it in there. So we had people who were able to help us to figure out what to put in. And also to double check and make sure that we were doing the right thing. But then we also reached out outside. So geodesy is a good one. SPCS 2022 is a good one. So we reached out to the geodesists and asked them to review our chapter and make sure we got it right. That was a really, really hard one to write. I ended up writing about SPCS 2022. I'm not Fritz, so.
I make Fritz come do the guest lecture.
Yeah, Kimmerling double-checked me. He's wonderful at that stuff too. But I think some things are really obvious. You know, you can just leave it out. We had some stuff in there about the Canadian Dominion Land Survey or something like that. Easy, take it out. But then still keeping that page limit is tricky, especially if you've got something like SPCS 2022, which ended up having 5 figures to help explain it. And we have 350 figures in our book. So it's figure heavy, and they take a lot of space. But luckily our captions are readable. And one of the things we did in this edition is we really reached out to the community. People that we knew, Tom has some stuff in there. People that we knew that were making the kinds of maps that illustrated the concepts that we were talking about, like cross-blended hypsometric tints. So we were able to reach out to our friends, make new friends, get their help with putting graphics into the book. But then we had all the Esri Press publications, including Cindy's books, and the map gallery, and the map books, and other Esri Press books that we can pull from because they already had permissions. And this is a huge thing for all of us. Permissions, permissions, permissions. And yeah, that's funny. He said, and the cost. We paid for one thing in our book, and it is that map that was on the front of the New Yorker magazine. That's the view of the world from 9th Avenue. That's the only one we paid for, and it was $300. Everything else we either reached out to people that we knew and they helped us, like Tom, or we just decided not to invest and found something else.
Yeah, I used a lot of federal mapping products because those are copyright free, and then made thick maps. Nate and I made maps from open data from cities or other entities that explicitly say on their website that the data is open for use in publication. The second edition, I had a beautiful map from the New York Times that I thought, oh, okay, I could pay for one map, and put it at the end, and it pulled together voting, bivariate voting data. Christian, it was one of the ones you showed. Then it was like $14,000. I can't remember the details. It was like $14,000, and you had to keep track of every one of them that was sold and keep paying it by the part. You know, I was like, no, we have no ability to do that. So my second edition kind of ended abruptly because that conversation. I couldn't get past that conversation with New York Times. So So we just made everything. Kristen, do you want to add?
It's true. When I got to the point where I can't find an example for this, I just thought, Aileen, you're a cartographer. Make a map.
I just have a question, actually. Don't mean to completely divert the conversation. But it's about content of the books. So how do you address or choose to include or exclude web-specific things? So a lot of the content in textbooks is print-specific for obvious reasons. There's a lot of overlap in web cartography with print, but there's also differences that are major. And also, so there's that question of how do you consider web, and then do you find web cartography as something that people will turn to books for advice on, or do they just tend to go for online resources?
I have an answer, but let me see if you guys do. Well, I work at Esri, and it's all about the web. So we see presentations by our colleagues that really just talk about web mapping, including Christian's work. So right up front in our introduction, we talk about different kinds of maps. So you get your reference maps and thematic maps and charts, cartometric maps, and then we talk about, and there are a bunch of other kinds too, tactile maps, accessible maps, 3D maps, multi-scale maps, art maps we have in there. And then we took a conscious decision to weave web into everything. So the second chapter's on map scale. Well, multi-scale is a conversation that you have nowadays when you're talking about map, scales of maps. So that's just in with the discussion of map scale. The one place where we sort of pulled web and made it a separate discussion and gave some attention to it was a new chapter that we included on layout. And layout for us was layout on a computer screen or layout on a page. Layout, and the computer screen could be a phone or it could be, whatever. So in that, we talk a little bit about the differences in layout for, web-based kinds of maps than print maps. And that's the only place. We just wove it in as much as we could.
So our book is divided into thirds, basically. So the first is fundamental things like map scale, and then the middle part is symbolization, and then the last third is all the new technology. So data exploration, animation, virtual augmented reality, geovisual analytics, uncertainty, and really the last third is very focused on research that's, for the most part, has integrated the web, some aspect of that. So, and we have links to the research papers and their products. So we do take a very conscious and direct approach to try to include the web throughout the book and all different, all different phases of those divisions. Yeah.
It's really hard. I mean, isn't it hard to separate them now in some ways? Design, you're right. There's some things.
I would say like Aileen described it, I interwove a little bit on web throughout, but probably not as much as needed. But one of the main things I change, my book's about map design specifically. So I talked about this current fashion of having dark backgrounds in the design. Dark, and then your symbols are bright or light and have to contrast with that. So I tried to put in examples that would show, okay, here's one with a light background, here's one with a dark background, and try to alternate that. I don't know how, in the print book it looks a little odd, but it is an ebook also, so I haven't looked at it yet online, but it probably works a little better as an ebook. So that's probably the main thing I did for web, is just talk about how you use color and line weight and contrast in both light and dark background environments. My book's really different than Fritz and Aileen's, I think, in that I don't really try to update it to changes in research because it's so specific to design. So it's more conventions of design, which I think are not changing so fast. I hope. So it's a sole author piece. I do want to have a co-author take it on if it's going to keep going, because I'm often associate dean land, so I'm probably not going to be writing another edition, so.
Right, so all of us are looking for new authors to join us.
So at least two of these are intended as textbooks, and Cindy's is sort of becoming a textbook. In what ways are you thinking about, or are you thinking about all of this pressure now for OER or lower cost type book? Like Matthews it's a monster.
The old one was.
$100.
That's part of the reason why the new one cannot be more than 300 pages.
Yeah,
A-
and that's
And it's in an ebook format.
amounts of pressure
Yeah,
to have, free or low cost materials for some of the students who are using the
right, right,
So it makes it really hard to use some of the fantastic resources that are out there in
yeah,
a substantive way.
right.
So is that ever a factor, or is that something that you consider in future issues?
I forget the name of the tool that serves the ebooks, but you can, on the Penn State bookstore, you can rent them for a short amount of time.
Vital source. Yeah. Oh, okay, so ours had to be shorter. It won't be printed in hardcover. It'll be only in softcover. It'll be in ebook format, and they're working really hard to make it really competitive with the other kinds of books that people would buy in that genre. Not the chemistry students, The geography students are not the same as the chemistry students. So they're really working hard to make sure that it's financially accessible as well. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the publisher does in terms of their cost model. I really don't. We haven't been told specifically by the publisher that that's something that is either on their back burner or something they're promoting.
Well,
I s-
it kind of, because of your fast required turnaround,
Yeah.
it's a response to the resale to used books, so they're making it expensive, and then obviously then it's more incentive to resale.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know.
Do you hear back from your users? Like are you aware of how many sofa you're on, and then do they ask you specifically of anything?
So that's a great question. So there's a couple different ways that we get feedback. One is people contact us directly through, just through email, say, hey, that number should be different, right? I mean, they drill down at the most odd things. I'm not saying. Yeah, they'll pick up the smallest little detail that isn't, it's wrong or it needs corrected, but still it's like, of all the things you could look at, you could. But we also, there's another mechanism to determine whether or not a new edition is needed. So at least with CRC Press, I don't know how it is with Esri, they send out a survey because they know who buys the book and they know who uses it in the classroom because students are buying the book. So CRC Press will send out a survey to these instructors with 10, 12 questions or whatever. And they get feedback that they then share with us about content, things that the instructors would like to see differently or change, whatever. So we get that, and that then helps us to understand what to include, but it also helps CRC Press, I think, in terms of telling us, yes, you need to do a new edition because we're getting picked out that things need to be updated. Yeah. Kind of as an aside, our book sells amazingly well in Europe, but it doesn't do so well here. And we think it's because of the research that we include in the book. We have over 1,500 citations in the book. It's massive, right? But so I think that we do well. And there's even a Korean translation of the book. It showed up one day. It was fascinating. I'd never, and they didn't contact us about that. They just did it. So apparently, the story is that this was through Pearson. So there was an instructor in Korea that wanted to use the book, and they bugged Pearson enough, and Pearson came up with a translation of it. It was paperback. I can't read a word of it, but it's pretty cool.
Cindy? What was the question again? Oh, feedback. I think a lot of it is what Fritz was saying. People get in touch with us directly. I go to a lot of conferences, and people come up to me, and I ask them, are you using the book? I also did like a little, I wish our Esri Press would tell us who's using the book. I had to go out and sort of do some research and find out, look for map use in their syllabus, that kind of thing. I found a lot more than I thought, and there were some professors who were bugging us about updating it, and these were the things they wanted to see. But ours wasn't as structured as his. We just sort of got feedback where we went, and then I reached out and asked people as well. Or if I was at a conference, what do you think? Should we include this in the book? Should we take that out? Blah, blah, blah.
This might be a sensitive question, but do you have any idea what the sales are of your books? Is it hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands?
Yeah, we get statements every year from the publisher. Well, we get just once a year. You get quarterly? Oh, wow, that's nice.
Well, you're talking about your royalties, right?
Well, but
No, but they're included.
Yeah, with the royalties comes a list of how many were sold. Now, it's to wholesalers, it's to Ingram, for example, as well as individuals, so it's kind of weirdly aggregated. But you get a number, I don't remember offhand, but.
Yeah, we don't. And the other question should be, how much do we get paid?
Yes, that's a good question.
Too sensitive.
No, so every semester, if I have my students buy the book, like day one, I say, okay, so this is the book. I want you to know up front how much I get paid out of this. So let's just say the book costs $100. So Terry gets 15% of that, to which he divides that 4 ways. So I'm basically getting like, what, $6 for every book that's sold. I'm looking forward to retirement, right? Yeah.
Gonna retire on that money. I have no idea.
Do you get, as an
I do
employee?
not get
Oh, yeah.
royalties.
Oh.
So, and I don't get the statements or anything. My co-authors do, and they got paid a pittance to write that book. But I get paid by the hour. So, but they get royalties. So I don't. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I got advances on the books, which was surprisingly big on the second edition and surprisingly small on the third edition, but they increased the royalty amount. The royalty amounts, it's not like Fritz's, it's like $3 or something a book. I handle my students by, I just put early drafts of the PDFs of the chapters on the it's called Canvas, the internal course management site. So I start, like, you can buy this or you can just stand there and listen to me and use my content. So, but yeah, it's not, I'm not gonna retire on it, like Fritz said. When it first comes out and it gets adopted, it's maybe a couple thousand, and then it kind of goes down from that. So
It's a labor of love.
yeah.
So another thing too, it depends on the publisher. So I'm working on a new book through Springer, and there's no royalties because it's everything that is going to be produced on this book is OER. They'll just put it on the website and anyone can download it for free. No institutional access. It's just everything's free about it. But they give me a token of appreciation at the front once it gets published. Just say thanks, But I don't get royalties from that at all.
Are they paying you for writing it?
A pittance.
Under 5,000.
Oh yeah, jeez.
So, and I think they, yeah, it's not much. And I think my sense of it is they use that advance, like mine was attached to milestones over a year. So you get a third of it when you do the first 5 chapters, another third of it the next 5 chapters, and I gave him a bonus chapter. And then, like, when it actually comes out and is proofread and all, was the final payment. So, and I think there was a little $1,000 to start, just to start the whole business. So I don't know. It was more incentive to keep you going, because plenty of authors sort of fizzle out. Just.
Right, and so my co-authors, they had a little bit of money, under $5,000, to each of them contribute to the book, and then they were out of contract. But we hadn't done our layout review yet, which means I'm not going to do the whole review. They have to look at it. They wrote it, So I'm like, you guys, you have to give them some more money. They have to do the layout review. And I got my hand slapped because I was like, Patrick and John, how much do you think you need for a layout review? It's going to take a week. It's like going to be 40 hours. And so they came up with $500. So I said, Esri Press, you're going to have to pay them something. I don't know. What do you think about $500? Did you tell them $500? Yes. That is a binding verbal agreement with Esri and them. You can't do that. And I had to get my hand slapped, but they each got another $500. So that was good, but it was just insanity.
Well, they were laughing at me. They were laughing at me because, like, Cindy, invoice us. Come on, invoice us. Because I was like doing other things. I meet a milestone and then don't send them an invoice. So professors don't know how to do invoicing, basically. But I mean, I do know, but it's not the first pressing thing for me to do.
Yeah, don't calculate how much you earn per hour on this. No, don't do it that way. I think all of us are lucky because we've got something to start with. I mean, starting from scratch would be, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
I really enjoy, it's a labor of love. I enjoyed writing that way. For me, it's not a research piece. I'm not catching up on the research. Mine is conventions and design, and I've been teaching this and researching it in other ways for many years. So I'm like, okay, don't look at the research. Just sit down and write what you know, Cindy, and then the professional copy editors are aggressively editing you, which is like relearning how to write as a professor who's been writing for a long time, which was really pretty fun because it's more colloquial, more taking a lot of wordiness out, lot smaller paragraphs, more approachable writing. So I felt like I was newly learning how to write in a different way, and that was really lovely to learn a new thing and to not be so. With academic writing, your every sentence is, do I need to cite something, and how do I support this, and so I just got to be Cindy and write about Cindy, write about my field from my opinion of it and perspective. So that book writing was really fun. The actual writing was really fun.
For me, so Terry puts his voice on all the chapters, and that's purposeful so that there's a continuity in the way things are expressed. We don't have, aside from a copy editor that goes through and checks for punctuation, things like that, there's no authoritative, like what Cindy has to help guide style or anything like that. It's Terry across all the chapters. So anything that I write, I mean, probably, I think there's like 6 or 7 versions that goes back and forth, but he wants things to be very specific, and I'm fine with that. I mean, that's great. But just different publishers, different approaches. Yeah, I did want to say one thing in terms of, for me, money was never the issue for being on the book. As a fresh PhD student, I saw the inclusion to be an amazing step in terms of getting my name out there for projections or whatever, and that was a huge motivation for me to get on the book. And even though I was in an academic setting where pre-tenure, book writing was not looked upon favorably. I kind of thumbed my nose at the at the department and said, look, this is an opportunity that I'm not going to pass up, regardless of what your rules are and so forth. So, yeah, I'm glad that I did, because people know me now because of the book, and it's been a great great association. Yeah.
I didn't have Cindy's editor. I had somebody who basically, I could have done spell check and grammar check, It was really weird.
Aggressively edited, that's interesting.
That's because I'm a better writer than you.
No doubt.
But that writing, the writing style of the book was very much Phil Murky.
Yeah, yours existed for a while.
Really just beautifully written, like almost poetic. And then Kimberly knew how to do it too. And then there's me. I mean, I don't write like that. I got a C in, creative writing in college, but I was okay on technical and scientific writing. So I have to work really hard to bring it down to a more conversational, like colloquial almost level. And Kimberly's there to keep an eye on me, but Patrick's as bad as me. So, and we didn't have anybody who was like looking at the voice of it, or even, anything like Cindy. They just basically spell and grammar checked us. But we worked together, and since I was the lead author, it was really important to me that I go through every single chapter, every single word, make sure that it really has that flow. It doesn't sound like, 3 different authors, because each of us did take separate chapters, and they were ours to be the lead on. So, yeah.
You get really sick of reading it, oh my gosh. I mean, you wrote it, and then you're reading it, and you read it again, and you read it again, and you read it again. And I found, I talked at the beginning about the style, the template and the styles. I couldn't start at the beginning and read and check everything. I have to go through and read the text that's going to be printed on the page, read just that, and then go read the captions, and then go read the credits, and then go back and read the alt tags, and just because I would get distracted and forget to do one of them or the other. And so it was just, I don't know, 30 times through a chapter, I guess. I don't know. It was just, you get really sick of it.
We do. And I don't know, when writing the alt tags, I had to go back through the whole thing, look at what was in the text, because like Cindy said, you can't say what's in the text, you can't say what's in the caption. So you have to look at the text, you have to look at the caption, you look at the figure, and you're like, that's the wrong figure. That's the figure for 3D maps, not, multi-scale maps. But I was really lucky too, because weirdly, so Patrick is like a brainiac, like you and Kimberly, the mathematical people, and I'm not like that at all. But Patrick's eye was weird. We have the visual variables, right? And there was a symbol in one of them that was arrangement or something like that, and it was cross ties on a line. And he's like, Aileen, there's no halo on the second cross tie. Like a 2-point white halo around that line. I was like, what are you looking at? But he had a beautiful eye that way, so he was able to catch a lot of that stuff. But, I mean, okay, so for example, first figure in chapter 8, which is qualitative thematic maps, was a volcano map. These orange volcanoes belong to this, and the blue ones belong to that. And there were no volcanoes on the map. So we all caught that one. But some of them, just stupid stuff like negative 90 degrees west. No, not negative 90 degrees west. 90 degrees west or negative 90 degrees, So, and those were on me. I would say 90% of the errors were mine. But because we changed almost every figure in that book, there was a lot to be looking at to make sure that all that was good.
What was I forget. What were we talking about?
We're just talking about learning to write.
Oh,
and
the writing
rereading and
process.
rereading and rereading.
Yeah, so Terry gets both Bob and myself to read every chapter, and sometimes several times through, and then Bob and Terry reads my chapters several times through. Hugh is the one that does all the graphics except for my chapters. I do my own graphics. So Hugh was instrumental from the second edition forward. He's the one that does all the graphics for all the chapters except mine. And he's got a very good eye. He's got a very good design sense. He's the one that does all the book covers, interestingly. He lays those out based on our ideas. So yeah, it's been a really good process to learn how to write, I think, for me. I remember Pierce Lewis, when I was a grad student, he wrote on one of my papers, he said, "This is a verbal disaster." So my writing has never been like great, but it's evolved thanks a lot to Terry. He gives a lot of good feedback, so I feel that I'm at least able to write somewhat academically now, and it's improving all the time.
We're all authors and we're all bad at it, except Cindy. She's good.
It was a real interesting session yesterday about AI and how it can be used in mapping. And, listening to you talk about, writing styles and trying to match Phil Murphy or Terry, do you see AI helping you with the kind of the voice of the writing that you're trying to achieve?
Right in the style of Phil Murphy.
I think what I'm going to use AI for is writing alt text.
Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. No. AI does not work for alt text.
This is we're getting punchy perhaps at this point, but I sat with my grads and we had this great idea that AI should write our annual review. So we were doing that, which didn't work at all. They had me in the Cartography Hall of Fame, which I was like, what? That's pretty funny. But we had them write a description of Rob Roth, another cartography professor in Old English, and it was very funny. It was like King Roth charges across the hill on his stallion. It was hilarious. So you can't do style.
Well, I did use we have an internal ChatGPT, Esri ChatGPT, for help on some things like that SPCS 2022, to make sure I got it right, but then also I sent it out for review. And I tried using it for the alt text, but I didn't even think about using it for the style. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I think that's really an interesting idea.
I suspect would be a disaster, but it's kind of fascinating.
Well, you would have to train it to know the style, for one thing. I don't know how you do that.
So, kind of unrelated note, the whole AI thing. So, I forget what year it was. CRC Press took our book content and sold it to Microsoft wholesale for inclusion in Copilot. They sold all of their books to Microsoft for the training for Copilot. We weren't informed of this. We weren't compensated in any way for this. It just happened. And we didn't even find out about it through CRC. We found about it back end. So that's another legal battle that I think it's still ongoing. We just signed up for a claims litigation against CRC Press, or Taylor Francis, for having done this, because there was nothing in the contract that said that they could do this. So I think they were hoping that it just happened and no one would actually pick up on it. So that's another problem with us. I don't know, as Press, I'm sure there's something.
I think they do. It could be in the Esri.
So, authors that spend years working on the book just have all their stuff taken away, and there's no recognition of that, there's no compensation, there's no attribution. It's really disheartening.
Yeah, because it shows up on somebody's AI written paragraph, word for word. So it's kind of annoying. Any final questions? We're going to wrap up here in the next 10 minutes. Any final observations from my colleagues?
In the nuts and bolts, you have 500 graphics and 11 chapter files, and you have a whole bunch of really systematic file names to keep track of because the people pouring it together don't want long descriptions. They want like a really specific format for figure 10.3.a, and so forth. And I'd put a little description there. So, and then when you find a mistake and update the figure, how do you make sure they're getting the updated one? And so there's some nuts and bolts that are for a big graphically intensive book. You have to be very organized, which we could do, but we had to be really organized.
And we took out like the third figure in the introductory chapter after the layout review, which meant that everything had to be repacked.
I have to say, in my book, the A and B figures are mostly because I took out a figure in the middle, and I was like, oh shit, I got to renumber all the files and all the figures. I'm just going to make this figure B.
I know. Yeah, you find workarounds.
And then so when we went from Pearson to CRC Press, the location of where the publication took place changed. So Pearson was still here in the US, but then CRC was in India. And when we changed to the new production, they got all of our chapters out of order. And we had to go back and oh, it was horrible. I mean, who knows? They were numbered, but when the place in India got them, they shuffled everything, and our chapters were not numbered correctly, nor the figures, everything. So we had to go back and change it all.
That's a massive.
It was huge.
You were looking at this like, oh my God.
I'm gonna have a beer at lunch. Yeah, I want to mention too that we had 3 authors, 2 in Oregon, 1 in Southern California. We met no times in person, all 3 of us. It was all done virtually. Patrick and I met here and there every so often, but we did everything virtually, and it was almost all through email and SharePoint. And, you know, it worked.
Google Docs.
Oh, you use Google? Oh, no, we didn't even use that. So it's possible to have your co-authors be in other locations. So. Any final observations from you guys? Things that you had thought you would want to talk about?
It's surprisingly hard to do a map when you have utter freedom of what place, topic, color, illustrate a bivariate topic. So that was kind of fun, and then kind of like, why can't we just do this? And it was like sort of going through the book and trying to do like Eastern U.S., Western U.S., South U.S., global, physical topics, national parks, human topics, children, elderly, like just trying to get variety in the book. But then that becomes its own weird little trap also. So it was interesting to do a book on maps when you don't have to do a map of any particular place.
Yeah. I'll say one other thing, that we have a lot, and I'm sure you do too, on using the coordinates off USGS topo maps. Coordinates, benchmarks, spot elevations are not on the new USGS topo maps. So that was tricky. I didn't want to keep using the historical maps to show what the SPCS grid looks like along the edge and the ticks and the stuff, but they weren't on the new ones. So that was a bit tricky and a bit disappointing because there is still the historical topo maps in our book. And then the other thing that happened to us was Esri Press lost our permissions from the last edition. So we had to go back and re-secure all our permissions that we used from the last edition. So
Permissions are long, they're multi-page, have the original author answer multiple questions, signatures.
well, you didn't.
Yeah, you got back in touch.
It was only two pages. They made it easier for us anyway, but they lost everything.
I just
So,
made everything.
yeah, so we had a family circus cartoon was the first illustration in the book, and the second one was this map from a guy named Eugene Cinervo who drew his perspective of the world from Michigan, and those permissions were gone. I did everything I could. Legal got involved, this and that and the other thing. Finally, I just looked up like Jeff Keane, who's the son of Bill Keane, who drew Family Circus, and I found his email address on the web, and I just wrote to him and I said, "Can we use your dad's cartoon?" And he said, "Sure." He didn't ask for any money. He said, "And by the way, I think I have a better version, and mine's in color." So he sent that off to us. But this Eugene Cinervo, I looked all over the place. He was 81 when he died. I looked for his family. I found people, but they had no email addresses. I don't even know if because they were brothers and sisters, and they were all like in their 80s. So I sent them snail mails and got nothing back. And so the very last image in the book, the very last figure in the book, is that one from, the view of the world from 9th Avenue in New York City, because I had to find something, and I was like, well, let's just go for the best, And weirdly, we got it, and like I said, it was only $300. But we didn't pay anything else, but we did have to go back and go get all those permissions for what we used out of the first edition.
I did a evil agreement with Esri Press on my second book. I said, they said, do a book. I said, I'll only do this if you do the permissions. So if you go into this naively, you might ask for that, because it's work you don't want to do, that you're not set up to do, that doesn't feed your soul at all. Anyway, that worked, but I didn't do it on the second one because I didn't use. Well, but if you're negotiating with any publisher, maybe try it. I told him I wouldn't tell him that, but that was a long time ago. That book didn't turn into anything much. So.
I've got a question. You've been talking a lot about the work that you have had to do to get your books out, mostly production and writing and so forth. What is the publisher doing for you on their end? Curiosity.
They're probably doing a lot more for Cindy than they're doing for me. Okay, they do have a copy editor, but ours was not a stringent copy editor like hers. They have someone to lay the book out, so you get to look at it, what it'll look like in the final print format, and you can make edits on. I think this figure needs to move, or.
Yeah, and they're smart layouts. I mean, they like really carefully put the series near the text that describes it, and make a new page break when a new topic starts, and things like that. But they're selling it and barcoding it and all that.
Like I said, they did our cover design, but I told them they needed to change it. They index it.
Yeah, but we index ours because that costs money.
It does cost money.
Yeah, they index money.
It does cost money.
Indexes are
And
hard
then
to edit.
I think the big thing is that they promote and publish and promote, and I have to go back and set up a marketing plan with Esri Press now.
That's pretty big.
It's a big thing, yeah, I think. Well, Amy, one more question.
I'm going to point out that you started out with, hey, we all wrote a book and we're on multiple editions, and we've devolved into, here are all the ways it's terrible.
I know. Well, yeah, I just got done. There's no other place in my mind right now. I'm like, But I think, okay, so what's positive about the process? I think for me, part of it is helping people to have a resource. It's really more for them than for me. It's not a me it's not me search. It's not for me. It's for people, to help them, and knowing that it might help maybe not just for you too, not just students in a classroom and a teacher who's trying to teach, but maybe a professional who's trying to find some reference material. By the way, we're going to be putting as many of our 350 images into PowerPoint presentations so teachers can just teach without having to create images from our book. I think we have some labs that we have already written up. So we're going to give some teachers resources too, but for me, that's a big part of it. What about you guys?
Yeah, like Aileen, you want to disseminate information to the reader in understandable format. But I'll be a little selfish here. I mean, I like to read, keep up to date on stuff, and that gives me a good motivation to do that. Because without it, I mean, I still would read, but I wouldn't try to read it with the idea of being able to tell someone else about it or explain it to someone. So I think that's a bonus.
Yeah, and I really did like the original goal, which was helping people who are using GIS make better maps. I mean, that's bluntly what it was for. And people come up to you and say, oh, your book really helped me do that. And Color Brewer helps people. And the Color Brewer colors are all printed in print in the back with their specs. And so there's, I think mine's different in character and more applied and not exactly public facing, but professional GIS people facing as well as students. So, yeah. So that, I like that. I like getting that our NACIS values out there to workers, and then they find NACIS sometimes too. One of the more fun, somebody sent me a text. They were touring homes and saw my book on the homeowner's bookshelf and took a picture and sent it to me. I was like, okay, that's a really weird email to get.
Well, thanks for hanging with us and being part of our chat. But we're out of time, so I'm going to thank my colleagues and friends and our wonderful audience too, our other colleagues and friends, and write a book. Try it.
Thank you. Thank you.